So on the top of Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, we excluded Noshim from Kabbalas Hadam in the case of Benos Aaron, based on the pasuk Vikrivu, and when it says Vikrivu, it says Bnei Aaron, and the word Vikrivu is a reference to Kabbalas Hadam. What about Hazos? How do we derive the conclusion that women are excluded from Hazos Hadam? And first, the Gemara has to clarify what exactly is Hazah in this context. Hazah dehecha. And the Gemara is going to exclude a number of possible interpretations of Hazah in our Mishnah. Idipara, if we're excluding women for Hazah, dam para duma, because at the moment that they shechted the paraduma, they took the dam and they were mazeh sheva pa'amim keneged beis kodesh kadoshim out there. So the Gemara says that's pshita. I don't need the Mishnah to exclude noshim, because with regard to the asiyah of paraduma, elazar kosuba, the pasuk in Chukas says v'lakach elazar hakohen midoma betzbo v'hizal nochach pnei ol moed midoma sheva piyamim. So all kohenim are excluded from Hazah. Only the Kohen Gadol, in this case Elazar, is included in Hazah. So for sure, women are not included. Idipnim. Perhaps we could suggest that the intention here, the mission of Hazah is Dama Karbanos, is the Karbanos that are done Lifnim, which means Lifnim, Lifnai v'Lifnim, inside the Kodesh Kadoshim on the Paroches, or Bifnim refers to the Heichal where the Mizbeach Hazav, otherwise known as Mizbeach HaKtorah, stood. For example, what's included in Dam Karbanos Hanases Bifnim, Par Kohen HaMashiach, Par Helim Tovashal Tzibur, and the Tana is excluding women from Hazos. In these cases, Gemara says he cannot accept that. Even this din is poshut. I didn't need the Tana to teach me this din, because HaKohen HaMashiach Kosuba. In the parsha of Hazah's Dama Karbanos, it says that Hazah is implemented through the Kohen, or by the Kohen Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen Gadol, who is Nimshach B'Shem HaMishcha. As the pasuk says in Vayikra Dal, V'lakach HaKohen HaMashiach midam hapar v'hizah. So it's explicit in the pasuk. I don't need drashas, I don't need Kiddushin, that it only applies to the male Kohen, and specifically to the Kohen Mashiach. So that even a Kohen hedges, even though he has Kedushas Kuna L'gabi Avoda, he's excluded from Hazos. So certainly women are not Ksheros for Hazos. Ella, says the Gemara, the final conclusion is Hazah de Benov. We're talking about the dam of a Chatas Ha'of in Perek Hey of Sefer Vayikra, V'zah midam hachatos. And women are excluded from Hazah's dam chatos. How do we know that? The asya v'kavachomer mi ben son, right? It says mi ben son. So we're talking about olas behema and the zrika of the dam of olas behema. At the beginning of a yikra v'uzarko, the zarko b'nei Aaron hakohanim es dama. Ma ben son shelo kavalo kohen l'shchitaso. In the case of a shchita of an olas behema, shchita ksher bizarre, you don't need a kohen to implement the shchita. Nevertheless, kavalo kohen laza also. The Torah says only a kohen is kosher for the zrikas adam al mizbeach is ben of the kava bo kohen limalikoso. Ein malika ksher bizarre. Only a kohen is kosher for malika, as the pasuk says at the beginning of Vayikra Vikrivo HaKohen el mizbechu morlak es rosho. Eino din, how much more so? It goes without saying, sheyikva lo lazah also, that we need a kohen for lazah. So this is the source from which we derive that hazah in the case of a ben of is psula be'isha. The Mishnah says that tnufa does not apply to women, with two exceptions: chutz minchas sota unizira. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer le Rabbi Yoshia didore. There were many different Rabbi Oshias, but we're talking about the Rabbi Oshia, who is an Amora and was alive in the generation of Rabbi Eliezer. Lo teisiv akarech adi amrit li lahosh ma'itita. Don't sit down on a chair until you first explain to me minayin leminchas sota shetuuna tnufa, that she has to do the tnufa in the case of minchas sota. Gemara says, what are you talking about? Minola? How do you know that minchas sota requires tnufa? Begufa ksiv. It says in the parsha of Sota, v'lakacha kohen miyado isha es minchas haknos v'heinif es hamincha. But rather, what was Rabbi Eliezer wondering about? Tnufa b'bayla minon. We know that the tnufa v'sota has to be implemented by the sota itself. Minolan, how do we know such a thing? The Torah only refers to tnufa al yidei kohen. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that the sota itself does the tnufa, the actual tnufa. We understand that the minchas sota requires tnufa. That's explicit in the pasuk, but that's done by a kohen. And the Gemara answers, Rav Yoshia answers, asya yad bishlamim. The fact that the bailim are menifim, the minchas sota, is derived from Gzeir Shava yad mishlamim, from tnufa that is obligatory in the emurim and chazav shok of a carbon shlamim. Right, the paradigm of tnufa is always going to be chazav shok of carbon shlamim. And now we have Gzeir Shava. Ksiv hach in the tnufa minchas sota, it says v'lakacha kohen miyado isha. Uksiv hasam in the tnufa of carbon shlamim. Yadav tiviena es isha Hashem. So we have v'lakacha kohen miyad isha. Yadav tiviena. And we derive one from the other Makan Kohen, just like in the sota, the tnuf has to be done even by a kohen, not enough by a sota. She herself is not sufficient, as it says in Parshas Naso v'lakacha kohen miyado isha es minchas haknos v'heinef. The Torah obligates the kohen to do the tnufa is af lahalan, so too in shlomim. Even though it doesn't explicitly say that the kohen does the tnufa, we're going to derive it from this Gzeir Shava, in which we equate the yad. And now the other way around, umala halon ba'olim, in the case of shlamim, the tnufa is done not only by the kohen alone, but also by the bailim, as it says in Vayikra Zayin, yadav tiviena, lahanef also tnufa l'fnei Hashem. So you need ba'olim in addition to the kohen. Afkan so too in sota, even though it doesn't explicitly say in the Torah that the tnufa is done by the bailim, but we know it's done by the bailim. Well, who's the bailim? L'chora, the bailim is the sota itself, but then we need the kohen to do the tnufa. It's ha ketzad. How can we reconcile these two psukim? That on the one hand, the kohen is called upon to do the tnufa, and number two, on the second hand, the bailim are called upon to do the tnufa. And the Gemara says, kohen machnas yodu tachas yad bailim umenif. The tnufa is done by both the bailim and by the kohen. Now here we have an issue in the commentaries about how exactly the kohen puts his hands underneath the hands of the sota to do the tnufa. Okay, so you have a whole discussion here. Some say that you need a chatzitza to separate his hands from her hands. Some say the yad itself somehow is a chatzitza. I'll just read to you, Yeshlom shekach tzivsa Torah lohanif. Okay, this has to do with shutfim bring a carbon together. And kavonas hagemara shakoin oches b'kli lemata. Bilabaylim ochesim bo lemala. So the hands don't touch each other because there's a kli in between. And how do we know that even in the case of a woman who accepted upon herself Naziros, then she has to bring at the end of her Naziros a carbon with a tnufa, and she herself has to do the tnufa, the Nazir herself. Asya, kaf misota. We're going to derive an exer shava in sota in Parshas Naso. It says v'nasan al kapera esmin chasidah. In Nazir, it says, "Lakakoin esas roa b'shelim in ha'ayel v'chalos matzachas min hasal urikike matzah echad v'nasal kape hazir." Just like in the case of Sota, she herself has to be a participant in the Tnufa. So too, in the case of Nazira, she too has to be a participant in the Tnufa. Now we get to the difference between what's called a chovas karka and a chovas haguf. Kol mitzvah shitluya ba'aretz, any mitzvah that's a chovas karka or gidule karka, like for example shmita, what grows in the seventh year, trumas, maisers, etc., etc. Ein oheges ela ba'aretz. Since it's a chovas karka, a chovas aretz, it is limited to the mitzvahs in the arts. But if you have a mitzvah that's totally in the guf, but not in the karka, or in gidule karka, then it applies even in chutzlar. So only a chovas karka or gidule karka is limited to Eretz Yisrael. And here we turn to the Aflamet Zion. There are two mitzvahs that l'chora are chovas karka, and yet they apply even in chutzlars. And again, we're going to have to derive these conclusions about Orla and Kalayim throughout the Sugya on Daf Lamed Zayin, Mirz Hashem. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Af HaChadash. Even Chadash, even though it depends upon the ground, on the karka, nevertheless it applies whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or even in Chutz La'aretz. So this is where we'll stop for today, and I'll wish you a great day. Thank you so much.